I'm gonna break down how to easily and effectively educate medical doctors and other health providers about chiropractic. I'm Dr. Dan, the chiropractic advocate. I get fired up and excited about helping you understand and explain the benefits of chiropractic. All right, first and foremost, to educate health professionals, particularly medical doctors, you must dress in a tie. You must put a suit coat on and you must look the part. Are you kidding me? No way. Take this crap off, and I say that because it's important to not be somebody else. Man, let's unbutton this thing. Be you. That's first and foremost. Be you. I can remember when the first medical doctor came into my practice, he was a cardiologist. And I remember trying to look so sophisticated and so smart, and boy, did I have it wrong. Because that's not the path. The path is to be you, but the question is, do you have the conviction and the confidence to explain the benefits of what you have so they can easily understand it? Because here's the deal. Medical doctors and health professionals need to be led. I can assure you, after now having spoken to hundreds and hundreds of medical doctors, health providers, PhDs, and even the editor-in-chief of the American Journal of Cardiology, and all his cronies, it was good, it was fine. There wasn't a lot of resistance because I dropped the hammer.
And then we'll drop the hammer
on what chiropractic can do. And I joke a little bit, but I did walk in there thinking, man, I'm gonna have to present myself in a way that's going to convince them or impress them. But the reality is, you don't need any of that stuff. You gotta be you. They just need to be led. They're humans, I'll tell you. They need it 3rd to 5th grade. Research shows that the average human thinks in a 3rd to 5th grade brain. That's how simply we must communicate for them to understand. So listen, I did a talk. What I thought could have been resistant, it wasn't. You may say, well, it's because you're so confident and convicted and maybe brought in evidence and research. And to that, you may be true, but you can have it too. I can show you the evidence. I can show you the research. I can show you the science. But when I got finished with this talk, I had a medical doctor come up to me. In fact, we put a camera in his face and you could see exactly what he said. Check it out.
Now, after learning a lot from Dr. Sullivan, I think I would really encourage other physicians to pay attention to chiropractic and not to just write it off. It's not just, something that specifically is related to back pain. I mean, it's really related to our nervous system and how our nervous system overall controls health. To some extent, that chiropractic played some role. Obviously, there's some central control over the sympathetic nervous system. I was not quite aware of how much of a role it played on the parasympathetic, on the sympathetic chain and its overall effect on visceral health and especially on immune health and macrophage function. Opened my eyes a lot, and especially with regard to treating our patients that don't just have back pain but have significant stress, anxiety, and then the effects that seemed to have on them long term.
So that doctor that you just saw in the white coat, he was sitting at the back of the room, and I saw him from a distance. People came up to me right after the talk, but I noticed he stuck around, and he was coming down the middle pathway, and I was looking at him. I'm like, you know what? I can double leg this guy if I need to. And so if this turned into a match, well, I was up for it. But he didn't come up to me and ask me about any research. He didn't get combative and resist anything I had to say or challenge my evidence. He looked at me and he said this, that's the first time I've heard some of this. It makes sense to me. And then he goes on to ask me this one question that literally transformed my approach in educating medical doctors and health professionals. He looked at me and says, hey, Dr. Dan, do you think that chiropractic could help my son? And we got into a 5-minute conversation about what his son was suffering with. He said, I've taken him all over this city, which was a big city with all the professionals, and he had all the access to the best of the best. And he says, there are no answers for my son. He's 8 years old. And I'm gonna tell you this right now as a chiropractor. If you've seen kids in your practice, you have helped kids with this exact condition and problem. And he looked at me and he said, I have tried everything, but I never thought to try chiropractic because I never thought that there would be a link. But after hearing you speak, I feel like there may be. And so I hooked him up with a chiropractor in the area that I knew. And I remember going home to my wife that night and realizing these are real humans with real lives, with real families. Yes, they have a little bit of education that is beyond the average in terms of physiology and health, but they're just like you and I. They're trying to navigate this thing called health, particularly as it relates to their family, their own personal lives, and they're no different. So when I teach this model to my clients, I break it down very simply, but it's always evidence-backed and it leaves no stone unturned. So let me break down the 5 simple steps that I use on educating medical doctors and health professionals all over the world. Step number 1, I never try to prove chiropractic. This isn't about the idea that chiropractic can benefit them. This is the idea that the spine is intimately connected to the functions of the body through the central nervous system. That's not a chiropractic theory. That's not a chiropractic principle. That's not from a chiropractic textbook. That is from Guyton's Physiology, which every doctor studies and learns from. So the beauty of chiropractic is that it just abides by the natural, God-given laws that make up human physiology. The spine is intimately connected to the central nervous system through a number of ways. And let me take a step back for a minute because I want to make sure you understand this concept. Einstein said, you can't explain something in simple terms if you don't understand it deep enough. And I have come to learn that the more I understand the implications of subluxation, the more I understand joint physiology, the more I understand the human spine and its relationship with the nervous system, the more conviction I have and the simpler I can explain it, the better I get at communicating it. So step number 1, I don't walk in proving chiropractic. I walk in explaining and teaching the connection between the spine and the central nervous system. Step number 2, I have to get them to understand that joint physiology is a real thing, that there are little receptors called mechanoreceptors inside the joint. Golgi tendon organs, Ruffini's end organs, free nerve endings, Pacinian corpuscles, these joint mechanoreceptors that are constantly interacting with the brain every millisecond of our lives. I didn't mean to take you back to part 1 boards there, but I want you to put in the comments if you remember those 4 joint receptors. Do you remember those? Or is this news to you? And I'm not saying you gotta remember it, I need to go back to Neuro 101. I am saying though, when you understand a little bit more of the depth of what we do and the impact we have with an adjustment, the easier it is to communicate. From a science standpoint, is the tiny little muscles that surround all spinal segments. These tiny little sensory muscles, as they call them, are loaded with muscle spindles. These muscle spindles are also nerve receptors sending feedback to the brain. Why is this important? This leads me to number 3, right? So we've established the purpose of the spine, the fact there's these receptors communicating with the brain every millisecond, and then 3, if these are altered, right? This aberrant afferent input into the brain triggers the amygdala, HPA axis, and then the stress hormones. Why is this important? Because when you study chronic disease physiology, it's always higher states of stress hormones, what we call the stress response. This leads to dysfunction within the system. You see, and if I've already lost you, here's the thing, like you can repeat this video and go through this and evaluate, do you own this at a level you could or should? I'm not looking for validation. I'm not looking for them to accept me. I'm not looking for them to approve chiropractic. That's not on them. I don't care if they approve it or not. I'm going in there to lead them. Now I'm gonna connect with them. I'm gonna find out where they're at. I'm gonna put myself in their shoes, but I'm not there to get their acceptance. I'm there to teach them and lead them because they're real humans and they need what you and I need, a chiropractor. Now I'm on step 4, and that is the research that backs up the validity and physiological effects of the adjustment. So when I think about the 2011 Ogira study, or the 2014 Plaza Manzano study, or the 2016 Havoc study from the Journal of Neuroplasticity, or the 2017 Ogira study. These studies all compile, and there's many more, but they compile this idea that the adjustment influences the brain. And I remember I was in Kansas City at Cleveland Chiropractic College, and I was talking with Heidi Avick, and I said, wouldn't it make sense based on the literature that instead of putting a spine in front of somebody and explaining all the aspects of the spine, that we literally put a brain in somebody's hand. And we explain the benefits of chiropractic from a brain standpoint. And in her very awesome New Zealand accent, she says, well, that's bloody brilliant. And that was the birth of the brain lamp that you see there behind me. I just wanted to create a prop that would allow the reference point for an average new patient to understand the benefits of chiropractic beyond just the back. And so the research validates this. The studies validate this because it influences the brain and changes that stress response. This isn't my research, this isn't my evidence, this isn't my science. This is the science taken directly from the same textbooks that they learned from. And then lastly, the 5th point that I always close up with, really I actually open and close up with, is a story. And the more stories you can put in there, the better, because it pulls it all together, right? Facts tell, stories sell. You cannot communicate the effectiveness of chiropractic in an effective manner where people are actually going to understand it, even if it's the most educated neuroscientists in the world, without using the power of story. They will not remember it. It will not create any sort of pattern changes in their brain, and it will not be clear and concise enough for them to have a new opinion about it. And so you must use the power of story. Which ones you ask? Well, first, I would use your signature story. The second thing I would use is patient testimony stories. I know they're anecdotes. I know an MD would say, well, that's anecdotal. It doesn't matter. That's how they remember it. Even though they will fight that it's not worthy or validated or evidence, it is real. It is real people experiencing real results with the benefits of an adjustment. Give me a comment. I will respond to it. Everything you ask, I will respond to, I promise. A piece of evidence, you need to see me in action doing this, I'll send you a video. You want to see more videos of doctors who have responded to my lectures or education or communication. You need help with the power of your own story, your signature story, or how to actually tell a good testimony. Even in your own office, to your own patients. This is what I do all day, every day for clients, because facts tell, stories sell. And when you have a level of conviction, combined with the right questions at the right time, and then you connect it with the power of story, I'm telling you, you can get 80 to 90% of people closing into care plans, regardless if they're a medical doctor, a neuroscientist, an orthopedic surgeon, a stay-at-home mom, a plumber, an electrician, or the President of the United States. It is truth, but truth is only as good as people can comprehend it. That said, there's more where that came from. I get fired up about this. I want to help you as a chiropractor grow your practice, grow your revenue, and be able to do it in a consistent, convicted way. I'm Dr. Dan. I'm out.